force myself to eat something before I leave for school. So that
I have my bodybuilding for so many years that you just have to
I can't eat anything before like 11.
Okay, everybody. So, in last class, we talked about the upper respiratory diseases. Starting from the nose, rhinitis, right? Rhino means nose. Rhinitis is the inflammation of nose, nasal cavity, pharyngitis, right? Tonsillitis, inflammation of pharynx, inflammation of tonsil, then laryngitis, your voice box, right? So if laryngitis occurs, you know that the voice changes. We talked about that, right? Because vocal cord is there. Inflammation of vocal cord, causes the change of voice. Then, if you see the respiratory system, you know that after pharynx, next is the larynx, and then the air tube or windpipe, that is the trachea. Okay? So trachea, this is pharynx, this is larynx, okay, and then trachea. And if you see the lower end of trachea, it is divided into two primary bronchi. Right primary bronchus is singular, left primary bronchus. So two bronchi, right and left. Then you have the lung. And now, if you see the right lung and left lung, there is a difference. Right lung is short and broad. So, right lung is broader, like this. But this way, right lung is slightly shorter. So this is right lung. It is shorter and broad or wide. Okay. Left lung is long and narrow. So they are not exactly same. Why right lung is this way shorter? Because, under the right lung you have the liver. Liver is located here in the right side, just under the lung, okay? So, when, your body organs grow, your liver grows here, right? And your lung grows here, right? And to give some room to the liver, the lung is pushed up, okay? Because liver grows here, okay? So lung is pushed toward upwards. So that makes the lung shorter, this way, okay? So here you have the liver, and left lung is narrow. Why? Because of the heart. You know that heart is mostly in the left side, and heart is located here. So to give some room for the heart, the left lung is narrow. This way. So liver pushes the right lung up, so it gets shorter. Your heart pushes the left lung this way, so it is narrower. So another difference is, if you see the right lung, there are two fissures. Fissures means deep cut. So this is called transverse fissure, also called horizontal fissure, same thing. And this one is called oblique fissure. Oblique fissure. Fissure is a deep cut. Okay. So now you tell me, there are two fissures in right lung, right? So that means if these two fissures will divide the right lung into how many pieces? 3. Makes sense? If I make 2 cut, it will divide into 3 pieces, right? So this part is called the upper lobe. Upper lobe. So 3 lobes. Upper lobe. This one is middle lobe. Middle lobe. And this one is lower lobe or inferior lobe. So 3 lobes by 2 fissures. Make sense? 2 fissures, 3 lobes. Now, left lung. Left lung only has one oblique fissure, no transverse. So only one oblique. Okay. So it has 2 lobes, upper lobe or superior lobe and lower lobe or inferior lobe. Okay, same thing. So those are the main differences between your right and left lungs. Now, how these fissures help clinically? How these fissures help clinically? Very simple. You see, if any infection occurs in this lobe, okay, it will stay within this lobe because this lobe is separated from this lobe. Make sense? Separated from this lobe. So infection, microorganism will stay within this lobe, will not easily go to other lobes. Is it clear? Or if any cancer or tumor is formed here, it will stay within that lobe, right? Will not enter because they are separated. Is it clear? So it will prevent the infection or cancer or tumor from spreading. It stops spreading. Will stay within that lobe usually. So you can dissect that part, remove that part. Okay. So that is the advantage of having the lobes. Now we'll see the diseases in the lower respiratory tract. That means in this part. Inside the lung, what happens after the primary or main bronchus enters into the lung, divides into lower, then tertiary, then terminal, respiratory, all those tiny branches. So I mentioned in last class, many branches, again and again, further branches take place. And this is called bronchial tree. Bronchial tree. It's like a tree. You know, in a tree, large branches, right? Then smaller branches, then further smaller branches. So, bronchial tree. And then alveoli. Each lung has about 150 million alveoli. Each lung has about 150 million alveoli. So if you spread all these alveoli on a floor, it will give you about 70 square meter surface area. It's a huge surface area. if you open those tiny balls, right, and put on the floor, spread, join them, will give a huge surface area, which is very helpful for gas exchange. More surface area, better exchange. Make sense? So that's the alveoli. Now we'll see only one alveolus. Alveolus is singular, so this is an alveolus. The wall of the alveolus is mainly formed by simple squamous cells, single layer of flat cells called simple squamous nucleus. So these are flat cells, a single layer, right? So that is the wall of the alveolus, very thin. So gas exchange can occur easily. So this is simple. Simple means one layer. Squamous means flat cells. So a single layer of flat cells. Is it clear? Simple squamous. So very thin. And each and every alveolus gets capillary on its surface. So this is the blood capillary, okay, on the surface of the alveolus. So you have blood here. This is the capillary. So how beautifully everything is structured, right? So tiny balls, but every alveolus gets capillary on its surface. Is it clear? So that ensures gas exchange, right? If you have alveolus but no capillary on it, gas exchange will not occur. Make sense? Blood must go there for gas exchange. So we know that blood goes to the lung to do what? To get oxygen, right? Blood goes to the lung to get oxygen from the alveolus. So this is the blood, this is the alveolus, oxygen will go from here to the blood. So when you inhale the air, oxygen enters into the lung, into the alveoli, and blood goes there from the heart to get that oxygen. Makes sense, right? So we know that. And remember one thing, carbon dioxide always moves in opposite direction. So what happens? Carbon dioxide from the blood enters into the alveolus, and we expel that carbon dioxide out. Okay? So that is the exchange between the alveolus and the blood, capillary blood. Blood gets oxygen and gives carbon dioxide. Okay? Now, there is another type of cells here in the wall of the alveolus. These cells are very important cells. These are called surfactant secreting cells. So another type of cells are in the wall of the alveoli. These are called surfactant secreting cells. Make sense? So they will secrete what? Its name is telling you. Surfactant. They secrete surfactant, right? That's why they are called surfactant secreting cells. Okay. Now, what is surfactant? Surfactant is a fluid. Surfactant is a fluid, and that fluid does what? Lines the inner surface of the alveolar wall like this. A thin layer forms a thin layer. So That is surfactant fluid, right? That lines the inner surface of the alveolar wall. Is it clear? This surfactant, this fluid is very important because this fluid keeps the alveoli open. If surfactant is not there, what will happen? The alveoli will collapse, will squeeze. Make sense? So surfactant, that fluid, lines the inner surface of the alveolar wall to keep the alveoli what? Open. Make sense? Otherwise, alveoli will squeeze, will collapse. And sometimes in infants that happens, that surfactant secreting cells are absent. Surfactant secreting cells are what? Absent. It happens in some cases. So in those infants, no surfactant is secreted, right? Because the cells are not there. It is a genetic disorder, genetically absent. And the alveoli will remain what? Open or collapsed? Collapsed. And that is called infant respiratory distress syndrome. Makes sense, right? Infant respiratory distress syndrome, or IRDS, happens in infants due to absence of surfactant secreting cells. The alveoli remain collapsed, will not open. So it is usually a genetic disorder. Genetic disorder means, the gene is absent that is responsible for the production of surfactant secreting cells. Make sense? That gene is not present, so that cell will not be produced. That's a serious, condition, medical condition. And infants usually die in this, case. But sometimes this can also happen due to premature birth. If the baby borns before the term, okay, then premature lung might not have surfactant secreting cells yet. So if you take care of that premature infant, okay, take care, then the surfactant secreting cells will be formed gradually, okay, because the lung is premature, so it is absent, but gradually those cells will be produced there, okay, and will start to produce surfactant, and that baby will be fine. So if it is genetically absent, that we cannot create. Make sense? But if it is due to premature birth, you take care of that infant, everything, then that will be produced. Anyway, so that is a clinical condition. Okay. Now, another genetic disorder, it is also a serious clinical condition, that is called cystic fibrosis. Have you heard this? Cystic fibrosis? Yes? No? Okay, cystic fibrosis. It happens in lung, but it can also occur in pancreas, liver, other intestine, other organs. Okay. Now, cystic fibrosis is also a genetic disorder, genetically, inherited from the parents. What happens? Chromosome number 7. Chromosome number 7 is defected. Okay. So if chromosome number 7 is defected or mutation occurs in chromosome number 7 that leads to cystic fibrosis. Okay? Now, chromosome number 7 produces a protein, okay, that is called cystic fibrosis transmembrane regulatory protein. It's a long name. Okay. Cystic fibrosis transmembrane regulatory protein. So, shortcut we say CFTR. It is a protein produced by chromosome number 7. It is a regulatory protein, and if this protein is not produced due to mutation of chromosome number 7, mutation or defective chromosome number 7, then this protein, regulatory protein, will not be produced. Make sense? So, what is the function? This regulatory protein, if this regulatory protein is not present in the lung, what will happen? The cells will secrete, this is the bronchiole, will secrete sticky mucus, not normal, highly thick sticky mucus inside the bronchioles, inside the lung. Okay? If this protein is absent. And that will block the small bronchioles. It is like a glue, glue-like, thick, sticky mucus. Okay? And that is cystic fibrosis. Okay? The person will have severe breathing problem. So that is another genetic disorder that we see. Now let's see other clinical conditions in lower respiratory tract. I believe in last class I talked about bronchitis, right? Chronic and acute bronchitis. So I'm not going to talk about that anymore. Pneumonia. Pneumonia is the inflammation of lung tissue. Okay? Inflammation of lung tissue. It could be due to virus, bacteria, chemicals, certain chemicals that can cause irritation in the lung when you breathe, like factory fume, right, or industrial fume. So gasoline, those things can cause inflammation. Dust is another, smoking. So it can happen due to any of those factors. Smoking, dust, chemicals, some medicines can also do that. Okay. Then of course virus, bacteria, microorganisms. Okay. So these are the main causes of pneumonia. Now, in pneumonia, what happens in the lung, fluid accumulates. And sometimes that fluid, infected fluid, becomes pus with dead cells. Okay? and mucus. Mucus is a common thing in almost all respiratory diseases, right? So, mucus secreted. The symptoms, shortness of breathing, fever, okay, painful breathing, okay, coughing. So all these are the symptoms, could be the symptoms of pneumonia. The main virus the main bacteria that is responsible for pneumonia is called pneumococcus. That's the bacteria. Pneumonia. So this is the name of the bacteria, okay, that is mainly responsible for pneumonia. But other factors can cause also inflammation, okay. So pneumococcus, pneumonia. So this is the inflammation of lung tissue itself, okay. Another clinical condition, you know that alveoli, in the alveolar sac, this is alveolar sac, this is another alveolar sac. So alveoli are attached to the alveolar duct. This is alveolar duct, this is sac, alveolar sac. And inside the sac, you have many alveoli. Now, a clinical condition that is called emphysema. Emphysema, where the wall of the alveoli are destroyed. Okay, so you see here, if the wall of alveoli walls are destroyed, then the total surface area will decrease. Gas exchange surface area will significantly decrease. Like just think that you have several balls here. Now if I make these balls flat, it will be a big surface area, right? All these balls, if I open and put on the floor, right, it will be a big area. Now if the wall is destroyed, now if I make it straight, the total surface area will be much smaller. Okay, so gas exchange in this case will be significantly decreased due to destruction of the wall of the alveoli. Okay, and emphysema also can be caused due to smoking. Smoking is the main problem in respiratory, factor respiratory diseases. Smoking can cause the destruction of the wall. Some chemicals can destroy the wall. Okay, infection, of course, microorganisms can destroy. So that is emphysema. Another clinical condition that is also infection of the lung, but by a bacteria that is called Bacterial Tuberculosis. Mycobacterium tuberculosis is the bacteria. If your lung is infected by this bacteria, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, that clinical condition is called TB. Probably you have heard that. Pulmonary pulmonary tuberculosis. All of you have heard this, I'm sure. Shortcut, we use the term TB. Pulmonary tuberculosis, okay, due to this bacterial infection. Okay? And vaccine is pretty good to stop that. Okay? And it is a disease that can be easily contaminated from one person to another person. Okay? Through air, the bacteria can be contaminated. So that is another clinical condition, pulmonary tuberculosis. When we say pulmonary, that means we say tuberculosis of lung. But just remember that from the lung, that tuberculosis, that bacteria can go to other tissues too. You know, tuberculosis not only occurs in the lung, but lung is a good site, okay? But it can happen in other tissues. For example, if that bacteria infects your bone, that is called Osteo Tuberculosis. Osteo means bone, right? Osteo Tuberculosis. So it can happen in other tissues too. But this bacteria loves the lung tissue more. Okay? Loves the lung tissue. This is the lung. Okay? And you know that you have pleura. I have talked about this in last class. Pleura is the covering, and it is a double layered serous membrane like this. Okay? So folded layer and forms double layer. So outer layer is parietal pleura. Parietal pleura, and inner is the visceral. We have talked about this in last class. Visceral pleura. In between, you have a cavity that is called pleural cavity. And this cavity normally contains a fluid that is a slippery fluid, lubricant fluid. So when you breathe, this fluid prevents the friction between these two layers, parietal and visceral, okay? Prevents the friction. Now, if inflammation occurs in the pleura, the covering, that is called pleuritis, also known as pleurisy. Same thing, okay? Pleuritis or pleurisy is the inflammation of the covering of the pleura. Very simple. And that causes short pain during breathing. Okay? And the person might have fever and other symptoms. Now, remember, this is one thing I need to know. Inside the lung, the pressure, air pressure is 759 to 761 millimeter of mercury. That is the pressure inside the lung, pressure of air inside the lung. Here, in the pleural cavity, the pressure is lower. Interpleural pressure here is 756 millimeter of mercury. 756 millimeter of mercury. So the pressure is what? Around the lung, the pressure is higher or lower? Lower. And that helps to keep the lung expanded all the time. Even when you expel the air out, your lung is in expanded condition, right? Less expanded, but still open. Now, if just think that if this pressure was higher than inside, what would have happened? Your lung will not be able to expand, right? If the pressure around the lung is higher than inside the lung will not be able to Did you understand that? If around you the pressure is high, high, you will not be able to, expand. So, but that is not the case, right? Case is what? Around the lung, inside the pleural cavity, the pressure is lower than inside. So the lung can easily expand. Now, think that if somebody stabs me, like, stab. Okay, a hole will be created here, right? And that will, if that pierces through the parietal pleura here, a hole will be created here, right? And what happens, outside of the body, the pressure is 760 millimeter of mercury. So, outside is 760, inside the pleural cavity is 756. So, immediately, air will get in to the pleural cavity from outside to inside. Gas always moves from high to low, high pressure to low pressure. So suddenly the air will get into the pleural cavity and will collapse the lung. Make sense? Now if the pressure around the lung is high, we push the lung, right, from all around and will squeeze the lung. Make sense? And that is called pneumothorax. Pneumothorax. Air in the thoracic cavity. Air in what? Thoracic cavity, the pleural cavity, right? Lot of air got in, and that will do what? Squeeze the lung. So the lung will be like this. The lung will be like this, and air around it. Okay. So this is pneumothorax. Make sense? Okay. If you do X-ray, you will be able to see that in this side the lung is good, normal size. In this side the lung is small, lot of air around it. Okay, that is pneumothorax. Okay. Asthma is another lower respiratory disease. Asthma is a condition in which the bronchospasm occurs. That means the bronchioles, those tiny tubes inside the lung, constrict. Bronchospasm. Okay. Bronchial tree, the bronchioles, tiny tubes, right, will constrict. Spasm will occur. The muscle will constrict. And that will decrease the airflow through the bronchioles. So the alveoli will not get enough air. So the problem occurs in both inhalation and exhalation of air. You will have difficulty in inhale and expel the air out because many tiny bronchioles can even completely get closed due to constriction. Okay? So that's a problem. Now what causes asthma? Many factors can cause asthma. One is, mostly allergic reaction. Some people get asthma when they, inhale dust or mold or pollen. Okay? food, cold, got enough, right? So you know that not everybody gets, attacked by same thing. Some people in cold weather, right? When they inhale cold air, they get asthma. Some people, when they eat certain food, they are allergic to that, okay? So some people suffer from asthma when pollen is released, okay? Now, all these things cause what? Allergic reaction. Allergic reaction. So, allergic reaction releases a chemical that is called histamine. We have talked about that before. Histamine is the chemical that mainly released from the mast cells. We have talked about that before. So, mast cells. And that histamine will do what? Bronchospasm or bronchoconstriction. Okay, make sense? So, allergic reactions release the chemicals. Main chemical is histamine, and that causes the constriction of the bronchioles, and that causes the problem in breathing, inspiration and expiration. Okay, the bronchial tree is constricted. Okay, so those are the factors, common factors that can cause asthma. Okay, so those are lower respiratory diseases. So bronchodilator is the treatment, the puff or that inhaler you take, that chemical goes in and will do what? Relax the muscle, okay? Will dilate the bronchioles. So we use bronchodilators to open the bronchioles. Make sense? And the person feels better. Now, why the patients of respiratory diseases suffer from fatigue or extreme tiredness? Because if the oxygen input or intake is less, oxygen is needed for metabolic reaction that I have shown you before to produce ATP. Metabolism, right, produces ATP. So the person will have less ATP production in the body because of lack of oxygen. Number one. Number two, the muscles are not getting enough oxygen, right? So muscles will not be able to function strongly. Another is your heart works more. Why? Since your tissue has lower oxygen in the tissue, the heart will do what? Will pump more to send more blood to the tissue, because tissue has low oxygen, right? So in that case, heart should do what? Should send more blood to the tissue, right? To provide oxygen. So your heart is pumping more. So you will get tired easily. So you see, those are the factors that causes the fatigueness in patient who suffer from respiratory diseases. That is one common, problem, that fatigueness due to lack of oxygen in the tissue, in the muscle, in the body, and your heart is working much more than normal. Okay. every time when you are breathing, for example, asthma, you got asthma or bronchitis, right? Every time you are breathing, you are using more force, right, to inhale or exhale the air, right? So you are using the muscles, respiratory muscles, much more, than normal. So your respiratory muscles are using more ATP than normal, right, to forcefully expand the lung. So that also another factor that causes the dryness. Okay. So here you see a picture showing chronic bronchitis. So what happens? This is healthy, so you see the lumen is much bigger, but in bronchitis, what happens? The wall, inflammation occurs in the wall, swelling of the wall occurs. So when the swelling occurs, the lumen gets narrow, the wall gets thick, right? And also mucus is secreted.